This is a Glendale Library Arts and Culture program, created for teens, edited and hosted by the Teen Library staff. Check out community service opportunities and teen events down in the description box.
Hi everyone, it's Melissa.
And Tsabary.
Welcome to another episode of G.E.N Talks, where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussions.
So grab a snack or drink and join us as we welcome our special guest today, Jessica, who is a family and marriage therapist.
Thank you, Jessica, for taking the time of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Jessica, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, which is so awesome. And we will dive into that a bit more. But I want to start kind of in the beginning of your journey. What gravitated you towards pursuing this career?
Yeah, so actually it happened in high school. I remember very vividly, I was in 10th grade or maybe 11th. I took AP Psych just because I thought it would be interesting. And pretty much by the end of that, class, I was like, this is for me. Like I loved how it explained, people's psyches and how things work in terms of like relationships and humans. And I find all of that very fascinating. So I was like, you know what? I think I want to keep pursuing psychology, and I never wavered. And then when I graduated and I went to college, I just knew like I'm going to be a psych major. By like my first or second year of undergrad, I was like, I think I'm going to be a therapist specifically. So pretty much since high school, which I know big people tend to go back and forth, but I was like, psych, like this is for me. And here I am.
So you got your master's from San Diego State University. Can you talk a little bit more about the journey to getting your degree, and that is there something through your journey that has stuck with you?
Yeah, so actually right after high school, I was, I had toured different UCs and different state schools. I knew I was going to stay in California, but I hadn't really decided where I wanted to live. So I actually went to community college for a couple of years, which I think is one of the most underrated and amazing resources that really all adolescents and young adults have. I mean, especially how insanely expensive like a 4-year, let alone if you go to grad school, is. And it's so much more affordable, and you can get all those GEs and really like explore what you want to do, because you could take a class. Anyway, I can go on and on about how much I love community colleges, but really it's an amazing resource. And I took a couple more trips, like visited different UCs, and I ended up applying to a few, and I ended up going to I went to UCSD. And I love San Diego, so I ended up living in San Diego for a long time. I went to UCSD, bachelor's, psych major there. And then, and I definitely knew I wanted to be a therapist. I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to do the MFT route, which is what I ended up doing, and that's my license, or do the psychologist route, because that's yet another route into clinical work, but it's more research heavy, at least initially. So different licenses, different degrees. Anyway, after kind of exploring options, I knew I did a lot of research at the VA hospital, like as a research assistant. And it was very fascinating, but it wasn't my thing. So I knew I want to do all clinical. I want to like be in the room with people doing, that psychological clinical work. So the state schools, the state system is really where all your masters and marriage and family, where those for public schools are going to be. The UCs do the PhDs. That's kind of what the breakdown is. So I loved San Diego. They have a really well-known and wonderful program at San Diego State. So I just kept living in San Diego, and I went to San Diego State.
And what do you consider to be the most important traits for a therapist to have?
That's a good question. Because a lot of therapists are made differently. We definitely don't have the same traits to be successful / just, as an individual, for this to be a career for you. You definitely want to, someone who can be a really good active listener, know that the process isn't about you. It's about your client in front of you. I would say practice what you preach. Like, you need to be able to, yes, we give advice and we help process things and bring people through it, but really do that yourself. That, you have to be willing to do your own work, able to, well, be a good clinician for your patients. So, traits are hard. Patience, and that things really be able to let go of control in the sense of that, we can give all of the best, we think, advice we have in the world, and people are just going to do what they do because they're human. And so, don't take things personally, but that also takes time over the years because we just want to help so bad. You're like, why aren't you doing it? So like the ability to trust the process, don't try to control others. What else? I'd say emotional intelligence needs to be there. I think most therapists are. That's what kind of brings them maybe to the field, but you really need to be able to understand yourself, other people's emotions to really get in there and do the work you need to do, at least the way I work. So, but so I guess those are some of the traits. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think you talked a little bit about it, but how about you? What do you consider to be your top 3 strengths and weaknesses as a therapist?
I'd say strength-wise, well, let's start with weaknesses. It's always nice to end on the positive note. I like to use areas for growth. That's my personal term, but probably because that's what I use with my clients. And this has gotten better over time, but there's this sense of sometime when, and a lot of therapists tend to be very empathetic, that you can kind of get again, better with experience. But at the beginning, there's this sense of someone's really anxious and like you want to help them so bad. And so you kind of can not spiral with them, but if you take on their emotions too much, then everyone just feels defeated or anxious or things like that. So it's really creating emotional boundaries. And, you're only human, and sometimes you go a little nuts. So that's always a work in progress. I don't know so much a weakness, but it's always something that needs to be worked on, and therapists always need to be really aware of that. What else? I'd say that needing to do more self-care, I think or realizing when you need to, because we're such like in a helping healer position that we sometimes let our own kind of stuff get backburnered, and that really actually affects your work and just your well-being. So being able to realize like, hey, again, those practice what you're preaching. And so sometime I'd be like, yeah, I need to do that more. I might not do that enough. Yeah. I probably would have pointed out a lot more weaknesses or areas for growth at the beginning, but you do, being kind of 10 years in, you really do build a good repertoire. So luckily I'm pretty confident. Strengths, I think I'm really, this is maybe goes back to kind of traits that you mentioned earlier. I think I'm really good at reading people, subtleties, patterns, emotions, and a simple facial expression. I can usually kind of know what's going on. I mean, not like details, I can't mind read or anything, right. But in terms of where they're emotionally at or connect. And there's a saying like you can only go as deep with your client as you've gone with yourself. So really doing my own emotional work, I think, has been a huge strength, because I'm definitely a better therapist for it. Strength wise, I tend to be very, and this is probably because of my training and my course, but I think I have a very good grasp on like socio-political issues, environmental issues that kind of really affect our mental health. So that, like racism or family systems or, the patriarchy, and then how that affects men and women. So just these ideas of much more broader concepts, which kind of traditionally weren't looked at as much. It was more like the individual psyche, but how, things like sexual orientation, or anything, gender orientation, how much those deeply affect our engagement with the world. And so, but also my training, that's why I picked this program that I went to, but that's huge. And I think, unfortunately, it goes overlooked, but such a huge part of mental health.
And you've mentioned it previously right now, how self-care is important, especially like, for therapists as well. So how do you, self-care?
How do I self-care? So I probably do a lot of things that most people do, but honestly, in terms of self-care, it really comes down to like having your boundaries. And I don't mean just at work, but with friends, family, and I mean that gently, like, if don't plan things back to back all the time. That's something that I've had to work on a lot of my life because I'm very go, very people person, and you burn out. So, hey, what are you doing this Saturday? Maybe you might be free, but maybe keep it free. And that's what I mean boundaries. Like, I actually can't hang out this week, but what about another time? Family obligations, same thing, have to put boundaries around it. How many clients I see in a day? Before I was pregnant, I could see a lot more, but my stamina changed when I was pregnant. So I had to decrease that. And at first I was like, does that mean I'm, all those things we tell ourselves about, being productive and I should be working more. No, you need to take care of yourself. So it always makes you, one, for your own health and well-being, but that will always make you a better therapist for your patient. So, boundaries, whether that is with time, how much you do in a day. I mean, yes, we have to work. So there's only so many things we can do around work, but, and just have fun, do stuff you like.
How have you seen the stigma around therapy and mental health change throughout your years at being in this field?
I must say, probably when I entered the field, definitely saw it changing in terms of maybe our parents' generation or grandparents, previous generations. So I think I entered it at a time when this kind of self-care, we're caring about mental health, the community is funding all these different programs. And, so that being said, I would say even in the last, maybe from when I started school in my 20s until now, like a good decade, 12 years later, that there's been a pretty massive push for looking at how much mental health just affects everyone in our communities, which has been, I hate to, in a topic like this, but, things like mass shootings and things that are so deeply horrendous and traumatizing that happen in our culture, a lot of it has to do with mental health and support, or lack thereof. So, this bigger conversation, like what's happening in our country, that yes, it's political practices and all these other things, but that's a huge part of it. And, also for people, and it's not just, trauma, and you see it in family relationships that, when things go unaddressed, we see the damage it causes. And that's always been apparent, but I think more people are, with social media, are vocalizing it. Blessing and a curse, you want to be careful what you put out there because it's always out there. But people are saying, yeah, hey, I'm anxious, or I've been dealing with depression, or, there is a space that used to be a very private thing, and now it's a more public thing, for better, for worse. But I think it's given it a face, it's given it more of a voice. Celebrities are influential, they're, coming out about it. So it's been cool to see that kind of revolution that people are like, oh yeah, I have therapists. Oh yeah, me too. But there's something about like, we all have therapists, and therapists of therapists, literally all of them. I think everyone should have a therapist. If not constantly, but through your life, no one's immune or above it. We're human. So I think the stigma, I think in millennial generation and on, of course, not all people from previous generations thought that way at all, but it has been decreasing, which is really awesome. Now you see billboards, like, especially I think during COVID, because people are not doing okay. So it's been really accelerated in the last year. But like, it's like mental health matters. I've seen that billboard everywhere, but that's cool. Like it's not some underground thing. And so, I think I came into it when it was losing its stigma, although it still exists. And it's really, I feel like every year it's destigmatized a little bit. It's being chipped away at.
And you have worked in private practice, hospital, and school-based settings, providing counseling and psychotherapy services to children, adults, couples, and families. So throughout this whole journey as a therapist, what has all of that taught you?
What has it taught me? It has certainly taught me that one mold, one brand, one way of going about therapy does not fit all, and that humans are so incredibly diverse in terms of what helps them, what reaches them, what makes sense to them. And that what you learn in school, all very valuable and you need it. But when you're like out there doing it and, the different settings, it's an incredibly different experience.
And what would you consider to be the leading cause of mental health issues today?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one cause. So, as a marriage and family therapist, and I think many therapists and psychologists these days, we're trained systemically, like in systems. Everything is a system, from your own mind to your little family unit, to the relationship, lovers, friends, that's your system. Your spirituality or faith, your race, your culture, the political systems, your socioeconomic status. So there's a lot of things that are all systemic and feed back into each other, that so not one cause, but when one of our systems is highly disrupted, or we are unable to change, manage, like, let's talk about racism, that largely is not in your control in terms of if you are a victim of it or a survivor of it rather, and or if you yourself are the one engaging in victimization or oppression, there's a disruption there. There's something not okay happening. Someone is hurting. Someone isn't doing well. And that's just a very, very small piece. You can get into, anxiety, depression, all the things. But so one cause, I wouldn't say there isn't one. I would say when there's a massive disruption in one of your areas of life.
Social media is so huge nowadays, and we keep on seeing how social media has impacted the youth's mental health. What is your take on it?
I think, unfortunately, although social media has benefits, it's gotten to a point that I think it's tipped into detrimental because of how it's used. Unfortunately, a huge amount of people are comparing themselves to others constantly. And, what you see on an Insta post or a story, or all the other possible platforms, it's just a snapshot, that 1 second they wanted you to see. It's highly curated. And the comparison trap will get you every time because there's no escaping it. And people judge themselves. And usually it's not like, wow, look how much better I am. It's look how, crappy I'm doing, or I should be doing that. And that's just, it's not authentic. And yet we're comparing it as if it is. The amount of likes you get on something, like the comments, viewing your stuff, that somehow equates to validation. I've been seen, popularity, and versus actual genuine interaction. And that, like, oh, if someone got more again, comparing, someone got more likes than me, I'm not as likable, I'm not as interesting. And it's deeply troubling, because also people are having more conversations, and behind a keyboard you might say a lot more and be a lot more callous than if that person was right in front of you and there's another human there. And how do we actually talk to each other face to face versus yelling from behind a keyboard, because they're just a screen name and a picture. And just it being the sole source of like validation and social fulfillment and gratification. And it's unfortunately very flimsy and not made of much. And that won't sustain you. Only actual human relationships will. So, I social media is great for some things, but I think we need to teach our teens and adolescents how to use social media and what it's actually there for. Not that we should take it away, it's in our culture and there's a lot of benefit to it, but appropriate use and really making sure they're having fulfilling life outside of screen time.
So mental health is so important, and during these troubling times, it can be hard to remember to take care of yourself. How do you recommend anyone listening to ways that they could take care of their mental health?
I'd say, well, one, reach out to someone else if you're not feeling okay. If, even if you just had a bad day, that means that, your mental health that day, wasn't so good, whether it's, someone who you trust, friend, parent, and just start talking about it, with other people you trust. I think a lot of the time when we're experiencing things, we think that our emotions are burdensome to others. And if we all think that, then no one talks and we all stay isolated. People who love you want to know how you're doing and they care about how you're doing. So reaching out to others is the first step, I think, in terms of self-care. If you feel it's, maybe going on for a while, more than just a few conversations, professional help, and a therapist. And, people can go through their insurance, so it can be affordable. And a lot of the time, it's also useful just to, if you're kind of feeling off, if you have the ability to sit with it, like, well, what is going on? Don't try to distract yourself. Don't try to, I'm not feeling good, I'm gonna just like mindlessly scroll. Don't distract, because usually if we can find out what it is, we can kind of know how to get help. But don't ignore what you're feeling. Actually try to understand what it is. Or at least, even if it's not like, it doesn't have to be a massive revelation, but like, oh, I'm nervous because my heart's beating really fast. Why am I nervous? Well, someone made this comment to me and that made me feel insecure. Like, just, what was it? Or reach out to someone and be like, I'm just feeling off today. Well, what's up? And just start or write. If you can't actually talk to anyone at the moment, write it. And sometime just change the scenery. Like, you feel cooped up, take a walk outside for a while. You just feel like you have this energy to burn, maybe go, do some jumping jacks or, listen to a song you really like, So I think sometimes just, you got to go have fun, and even if you don't want to get into all your stuff with someone else, be like, hey, do you want, I know that some people are hanging out now and things are opening, but it's like, hey, do you want to do like a Zoom dinner or lunch or happy out? Well, not for our teen audience, but we're grown up, we're looking one. But yeah, sometimes we just need to like switch. We just need to shift. So self-care can look like a lot of things, but are you caring for yourself? And sometimes that's listening to yourself or reaching out to someone else.
Before we end, we have some rapid fire questions to ask you. The first question is, what is your favorite color?
Oh, purple, 100%.
What is something that you have been proud to say that you have accomplished?
I'm really proud that I started my private practice and it's successful. I'm going to be, gloaty for a second, but I was very much in managed care for a long time and really scared about it. And I knew nothing about business or marketing, but I knew I was unhappy where I was. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. And because of what I wanted to specialize in, it just didn't make sense for where I was. So just building that and creating it. And I think making my job something I actually like to do.
And what is some advice that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
You have less control than you think, but the things you have control of, you can really take by the reins and run with it. I think so much of our anxiety and worries, and whether it's relationships, work, parenting, whatever, come from this like, I gotta know how to do everything and control everything and know everything. And that's a farce, because that's never going to be possible. And I think so much of our worry comes from that. So this idea of like, you have your little realm of influence and the things that you could do, and you could do a lot in there. But the rest of it, things are going to come your way. Some are going to suck. Some are going to be awesome. Some are going to be neutral. But don't try to plan, control, rein in everything, because you'll drive yourself crazy. And a lot of the time it's going to turn out the way it turns out anyway. but what you can control, and how you can maneuver, take those reins, use that.
And if you could have 3 people, dead or alive, for dinner guests, who would they be?
I think I'd want the Buddha. Maybe like a great-great-grandparent, because they like went through, on my mom's side, like the revolution in Russia, and just being, I don't know, it's such a different experience than like, and I don't know too much about like the ancestry of my family, so maybe like an ancestor on mom or dad's side, honestly. That would be kind of cool. And then I don't know, I want to meet with like a Viking. I'm just super into the Vikings right now, and I can be so hardcore, and their culture just seemed to like, kind of Christian, like colonialism, like just their, I know that sounds really weird, but like some like Viking warrior queen, just like, come to the table, lady, like let's talk about this, because I feel like I vibe with that. Most random group you'll ever see.
And what is a book that you have read recently or are currently reading that you would recommend?
I actually have it near me. I don't know if I show it, because I don't, okay.
Yeah, you could show it.
Yeah. So because I am pregnant and about to be a parent for the first time, I'm reading can't really see it. Conscious Parent by Shefali Salisbury. So she's a clinical psychologist who works with children, and so there's that piece, but then she also mixes in a lot of Eastern philosophy. It seems mostly coming from like Buddha and like Hindu traditions and things like that, but like mindfulness in terms of, being highly self-aware and bringing this kind of very present consciousness with you into parenting. And then she gives a lot of like case studies, and so she has Western training, but kind of brings in some Eastern stuff. And I have found it really, really amazing. So when, reading it, reflecting, okay, things like how can I be that way, incorporate that into my own parenting, but also reflecting on how I was parented and, how others were. So it's a really, because we tend to repeat and do certain, patterns that our parents did, some of which we want to repeat, some of which we don't. And a lot of the things, how we might unconsciously do so. So just bringing this huge amount of consciousness and awareness to parenting, because that's how you have to parent, you have to be, that way and be present. So it's been fantastic. So that's what I've been reading recently.
Thank you, Jessica, so much. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they can connect with you?
Yes. So my biggest project is a baby. So professionally, I won't be connectable, at least not recently. In the next 6 months, I will be, going back to work. So in terms of projects, my professional life is on hold for a second, but when I do come back, I'm just going to go right into private practice. Hopefully, if COVID has passed, in the office again and wanting to see clients and just start practicing again. So, but for now, where to reach me? Yes. So my website is probably the best way to get in touch with me. That is jessicawhiteheadmft.com. Also, you can find me on Psychology Today. It's like pretty much the biggest database of therapists, counselors, coaches, you name it. I'm on there too. So it's psychologytoday.com. Again, Jessica Whitehead, LMFT. And you can also get in touch with me through those. And my phone number is all that stuff, is all my other contact info is on there. But until the fall, I'll be doing the mom thing, but then I'll be back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed this. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you.
Of
And
course.
congrats too.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, also congrats on the baby.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
4 weeks. So.
Hi, everyone. It's Tsabary again.
Yeah, Melissa.
Did you enjoy this episode?
I'm sure you did.
Then please make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for this channel.
Check out the teen content video playlist here and our latest Teen Gen episode here.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.